Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday Apocryphal Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Friday Apocryphal and podcast. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are covering 2 Maccabees chapters 11 through 12.
Bam.
Awesome.
Yep, we did it.
We're getting this.
We're so good. Okay, so what kind of stuff are we covering in chapters 11 and 12 today?
We're covering some battles. We are also covering a series of letters, and we can talk about their compositional history a bit. Mm-hmm. So that's most of the stuff that we're going over, and of course we've discussed this before, but multiple Timothys, they're going to pop up in this chapter. Yeah.
Cool. So let's start it off then.
Yeah, what translation do you have there, buddy?
I have the Anchor Bible version of 2 Maccabees, a new translation with introduction and commentary by Jonathan A. Goldstein.
I have the Hermenia commentary and translation by Robert Dorn. I also have Erdmann's commentary on the Bible, and this is the New Interpreter's Bible commentary that we have. And this section is also written by Dorn, so there's a lot of similarities between these two, but this one is much better. The Hermenia commentaries are just way more in depth.
Yep. Nothing in there is written by Doran.
I don't think so.
Oh, man. What if?
Well, it's not written by Dorn. He's cited a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
He's got a thing for this, man.
Yeah, he is a fan of 2 Maccabees.
Yeah. The first expedition of Lysias and the end of the persecution.
Yes, so this section, the story of the first expedition of Lysias is told here as having occurred during the reign of Antiochus V, who was only 9 years old at this time. It actually occurred, however, under Antiochus IV. As mentioned before, the author did not wish to shift focus away from Antiochus IV as the main constant antagonist of the Jews, and the author narrated one major battle before the death of Antiochus IV.
Excellent. Only a short time thereafter, Lysias, guardian and kinsman of the king and chief minister, very angry over the course of events, mustered about 80,000 men and the entire cavalry and marched against the Jews, intending to turn their city into a Greek settlement, to make their temples subject to tribute, like the shrines of other nations, and to turn the high priesthood into an office to be put up for sale annually.
So no explicit reason is given for Lysias' decision to invade Judea except for the narrative connection with the events in 2 Maccabees 11. In the corresponding place, in 1 Maccabees 4:26, Lysias is told of what had happened to the invasion of Ptolemy, Nicanor, and Gorgias. The force assembled, particularly with the mention of elephants, is enormous. But 1 Maccabees 4:28 has, did you get to the end of verse 3 already?
Yes.
Okay. But 1 Maccabees 4:28 has 60,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry. In both accounts, the figures for the size of the enemy are excessive to enhance the victory of the Jews. And we get that a lot.
Yeah, the 1 Maccabees 4:28 reference that you were talking about, well, Goldstein uses it as a point in favor of the idea of a common source.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. All right. Puffed up by his consciousness of having put up for... oh, no, I skipped a line. Okay. Puffed up by his consciousness of having his tens of thousands of infantry and his thousands of cavalry and his 80 elephants, he took no thought whatever of the might of God. Well, I guess when you have that much cavalry and elephants.
Yeah, and of course the number is different from the one in 1 Maccabees.
Yeah, only 80 elephants, though.
He could do better.
Yeah, he could do better. It doesn't seem like much. Maybe it's like a numerological thing.
Yo, that means there's only 8 by my logic. Because they exaggerate everything.
They
Right.
do exaggerate everything.
So if they exaggerated the elephants to the same degree that they exaggerate their troop numbers, which I think 8,000 is particularly quite reasonable compared to 80,000, 8 elephants is also particularly reasonable for 8,000 guys to hold on to. Because they're,
I have no idea.
You
Right.
don't, you don't think about it, I guess.
I don't really think about the amount of elephants you're going to need for a battle.
Well, I mean,
Against like a small city, not that many. Elephants are pretty good. War
Well,
elephants, anyways.
also you got to keep in mind that this is like not a king. This is guardian and kinsman of the king.
Yeah, because Antiochus would be a child, as is pointed out.
Right.
Antiochus the fifth, of course. Yeah. So
Right.
This
And
guy's in charge.
being not a king, his army might not be the most impressive.
well, I mean, he probably used the king's army.
Yeah, or at least like part of the king's army.
sure.
The tens of thousands of infantry, right?
Yeah.
So is that like a David reference?
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. He invaded Judea and approached Beth Zur, a strong point about 5 shoinoi from Jerusalem, and pressed it hard. What's a shoinoi?
So there's there's quite a bit about this actually. So shoinoi would be better understood as 5 stadia. So
Okay.
if a shoinoi is about 30, there's quite a lot here. So I'm just going to read off this whole section in context.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Beth Zur is 28 kilometers south of Jerusalem by road, and so is about 5 shoinoi, rather than 5 stadia from Jerusalem. If a shoinoi is about 30 stadia, the stadion being about 200 meters. And then there's way more notes about this.
Okay, so it's a unit of measurement for long distances.
It is, yes.
I
So
get
Second Maccabees describes Beth Zur as being 5 shoinoi, not stadia, as the NRSV translates from Jerusalem. The shoinoi, a Persian measure, could equal 30, 40, or 60 stadia. Since a stadium is about 1/5 of a kilometer, 5 shoinoi of 30 stadia would locate Beth Zur about 30 kilometers south of Jerusalem. It's actually 28.5 kilometers south.
Yeah, I get like the importance of accurate translations.
Yeah.
But I wish they would update the measurements. Like, just because I don't really see the
They use
point.
meters. That's the best we got there out of those as a conversion we can use.
Yeah, but like how in the Bible they use cubits a lot,
Yeah.
and that doesn't really mean anything.
It's super subjective.
It is very, it is kind of vague. Yeah.
Yeah. So they should just update that. I don't care about the translation itself. Update the measurements.
I mean, I
Put
think
it in a side note at least.
in a side note would be good. I would rather keep a translation of the actual text.
As is.
Yeah, and then have a note about it.
Yeah, but as it is, it just stands out as an untranslated word anyway.
Sure, but that's why we have all these.
Right.
You
Right.
just have to make your own translation.
And we
That's
are
about
here
it.
to help you understand, so you know what a shoinoi is.
Right.
It was important and you needed to know. That's like one of the questions they ask.
So when
Don't ask what they are.
Maccabeus and his men learned that Lysias was besieging the fortifications, they and the populace, with wailing and tears, turned in supplication to the Lord, begging him to send a good angel to save Israel.
So there is quite a bit about this, but tell me when you get to the end of verse 12 so we can talk about the whole section.
All right. But, this doesn't seem like the first Maccabees account, really. Like, there weren't references to God, really. And this is about to get very
Angely.
angely. Yep. Maccabees himself was the first to snatch up his arms. He then exhorted the others to join him, brave the dangers, and come to the aid of their brothers. Fired with zeal, they all surged out together. Then and there, as they stood near Jerusalem, a man on horseback appeared at their head, dressed in white, brandishing his golden weaponry. That would be very ineffective.
It's just how it looks.
Together, they all blessed their merciful God, and their courage rose, so that they were ready to plunge their weapons not only into men, but also into the most savage beasts, and into walls of steel. They advanced under arms, accompanied by their ally from heaven, for the Lord had granted them his mercy. Like lions, they dashed upon the enemy and laid low 11,000 of them, as well as 1,600 cavalry, and put the whole force to flight. Most of them were wounded and escaped by throwing away their arms. Lysias himself escaped by shameful flight. That's the end of verse 12.
So just for a little bit of textual commentary, the adverb like lions, I suppose, well, the actual word, if you want it in the Greek, is leontodon. Wow. Weird. But it's, like lions, is a hapax legomenon. I don't know what the hell that is, but something Latin, it seems. The author likes this way of forming adverbs, and then he points out a couple examples. The method of adding numbers through pros plus a dative is found in later Greek authors, including Polybius. So it's just a kind of a theme, the way he does that, the way he sets up those specific words.
Yeah. Well,
and then for the entire narrative, because it did get kind of crazy, the closest parallels to this scene are from non-biblical accounts. The battle between the Romans and the Latins when the Dioscuri, the twin gods, charged at the head of the Roman force and forced the Latins to flee. Athena's help to the citizens of... I'm not going to be able to say this right. Cyzicus. Yes, and Theseus, who at Marathon rushed before the Greeks at the barbarians. In this account, the role of the divine heroes of the Greeks had been taken over by an angel of the Lord.
All right. That sucks.
They stole this.
They stole it.
It's not how...
Yeah, that's how it works.
Oh, my God.
Totally. Since he was no fool, he pondered the defeats he had suffered and realized that the Hebrews were invincible, inasmuch as their mighty God was fighting as their ally. Accordingly, he sent them a message and urged them to make peace on terms restoring to them all their rights and missing text. In the middle of verse 14.
Okay, I'll check it.
I'm going to check in here, too, because usually...
And persuasively proposed to come to an agreement on completely equitable terms, and thereupon to constrain the king as well to be a friend to them. So that's verse 14.
Mm-hmm.
The word persuasively proposed must be seen here as an ingressive aorist, as the following verse shows the reaction to the proposal. A king can be said to extend friendship towards a city. That's the only textual note on 14.
The text of the Greek manuscripts in the second half of our verse is so corrupt as to be untranslatable. Kai dioti kai ton basilia pesen philon autois anakaisian genesthai. The general sense, however, is clear, and in my translation, I've left a gap where diotes stands and have omitted the word pesen.
That's interesting that he would say that. So the note here, while Lysias is said in 1 Maccabees to retreat to Antioch in order to regroup and gather an even larger force, here, continuing under the assumption that these events occurred during the reign of Antiochus V, Lysias recognizes, even as Heliodorus had done, that the Hebrews were invincible while God was their ally. Such a realization leads Lysias to negotiate for peace. That's verse 14, and cross-reference the request of the Hasidians at 1 Maccabees 7:12, where the same phrase, just terms, and I think you actually listed this one, dikaio, is used.
It might be in here.
Yeah, I think that was one of the ones that you listed. But the end of verse 14 is difficult, as two verbs, persuade, paito, and compel, anagkazo, are found. The verse should be translated, promising that he would compel the king to be their friend. Most likely, scribes found it doubtful that a minister could compel a king to do anything, and so inserted the verb for to persuade.
Right. It says the Greek scribes found the idea of a minister compelling a king improbable and inserted the future infinitive paisein, persuade, in the margin as a suggested alternative. As often happens, the marginal suggestion was taken into the text without displacing the original.
That happens a lot, actually.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, where was I? In the middle of this verse. Yeah. I'll just start the verse over. And urge them to make peace on terms restoring to them all their rights and dioti, right? Because there's the missing text. That he would make the king, too, become friendly to them. Maccabeus, who had an eye for the advantageous, consented to all Lysias's proposals, for the king granted all the requests concerning the Jews which Maccabeus submitted to Lysias in writing. The content of the letters, written to the Jews was as follows.
So before we hop into these letters, there is 4 of them, and there's a lot of questions.
4?
Yes, 4 letters. There are a lot of questions surrounding them. So let's hop right into this. The dates given in the documents also present problems. The month mentioned in the first letter, Dioscorinthius, that's the name of the month apparently, is otherwise unknown in the Macedonian calendar. In addition, both the third and fourth letter are dated 15th of Xanthicus, although their respective contents make it improbable that they were written on the same day. According to the third letter, it was Menelaus and not Judas who conducted the negotiations with Lysias, whereas the first and fourth letters seem unlikely to have originated from Menelaus's followers. The order of the letters does not seem correct, as the fourth letter precedes the decision of the king, while the second and third are decisions of the king. So after discussing some different ideas, Doran goes on to say, according to Bar Kokhba, Antiochus IV refused to negotiate, but Menelaus's request for conditional amnesty was allowed. That's letter 3. Letter 2 is the official reprieve of the persecution by Antiochus V. In general, the arguments of Bar Kokhba are very plausible, although letter 3 should probably be placed earlier.
Okay, so the content of the letters written to the Jews was as follows. First, one from Lysias. Lysias to the community of Jews. Greeting. This is very common. Yeah. John and Absalom, the spokesman sent by you, submitted the document copied below and presented requests concerning its provisions. I have indicated what points have to be brought also before the king.
So this is actually kind of cool about the Greek names here. The Hebrew names that were used. The Hebrew names John, most likely Johanan, and Absalom have been seen as an indication that these were not members of the party of Menelaus, who would have adopted Greek names. They are also called not ambassadors, but simply the ones sent, as is frequent in royal letters.
Mm-hmm. Those points, which I myself could grant, I did. If you continue to maintain your loyalty to the state, I shall try in the future, too, to act for your benefit. I have ordered your spokesman and mine to discuss the details with you. Farewell. In the year 148, on the 24th of... There's some missing text. I looked in the back here. So the note says the year 148, Seleucid Macedonian, ran from October 2nd, 165 through September 21st, 164 BCE. The year number is unlikely to be corrupt or to have suffered tampering. In the first place, it is written out in words, not figures. Moreover, information which we possess, but which was unavailable to Jason and to the ancient scribes, makes that year number contradict Jason's own chronological theory. The reading in the 149th year at verse 38 cannot be what Jason wrote, either here or there. Whatever were the dates written in the original documents, this manuscript that he's referencing can only be a witness to what Jason wrote, and Jason must have believed our letter preceded the other three documents in our chapter, since he presents all four as resulting from negotiations at the end of Lysias' first campaign, and he must have recognized from the contents of verses 34 through 38 that the letter there followed soon after Lysias's.
So there is quite a bit here on, the year. So the Macedonian Seleucid year, 148, ran from October 165 BCE to late September 164 BCE. Since Antiochus IV died in November or December 164 BCE, the letter, if the year is accepted, was written while he was still alive. The king referred to in this verse, therefore, would be Antiochus IV, not Antiochus V. Since Lysias was guardian of the young Antiochus V, it would seem that he would not have to make a distinction, such as in this verse, if Antiochus IV were dead. The narrative of 2 Maccabees, however, has not previously given a date for Antiochus IV's death. It implies that the letter is being sent to Antiochus V. And then furthermore, the year, pretty much gave the date again for like what that would be equivalent to.
Mm-hmm.
So 165 and 164. And then Dioscorinthius has been interpreted as Dios, the first month in the Macedonian calendar, or Distros, the fifth month, or Diceos, the eighth month.
Oh, wonderful. That's not confusing or contrived at all.
Not even a little bit. That does complicate things. But then here's a note on the general. Actually, this pretty much actually says the same thing. Yeah, we can move on. Okay. That's just the same stuff.
I will say that Goldstein has his commentary on the chronology of the letters is so long that it has its own subsection.
Yeah.
In the notes, which not like he usually presents it with verse by verse, but its own like middle of the page, full caps titled subsection.
Yeah, you'd think that would be something you could put in like an introduction if you're going to have a whole chapter about it, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The content of the king's letter was as follows. King Antiochus to his brother Lysias, greeting. Now that our father has passed away to the gods, We wish the subject of our kingdom to be undisturbed in the pursuit of their own private affairs.
Yeah, so verse 23 uses a phrase that was customarily used at the death of a king, cross-reference 2 Maccabees 4:7, and would suggest a time near the ascension of Antiochus V.
We have heard that the Jews do not accept our father's decree for a change over to Greek ways, but prefer their own pattern of life and ask that they be allowed to follow their own legal usages. Since we choose that this nation too may be free from disturbances, we decree that their temple be restored to them and that they govern their lives in accordance with the customs in force in the time of their ancestors. You will do well to transmit this to them and to give them assurances, in order that they, knowing our policy, may take heart and gladly devote themselves to their own private affairs. The king's letter to the nation was as follows.
So, since we have finished the second letter,
Yes.
let's talk about it a little bit, shall we?
Yeah, let's talk about this second letter. So it seems strange. Well, perhaps not in the light of all of the military victories that the Jews have been having, right? But it does seem generally strange that if they're going on this large campaign to essentially westernize, right? Like,
In a way, yeah.
yeah, it seems strange that they would give an exception to a culture that has a strong military force, right? Because that eventually becomes a threat.
So, something cool about the scholarship for this letter is some think it is a forgery on the grounds that it's too sympathetic to the Jews.
Agreed.
Yeah. That the young king would not be allowed to make such generous policy changes. Yeah, that's another issue. But of course, the commentary here he has is, but why not if the policy was really Lysias's? And that the Jewish author of 2 Maccabees could have no access to a letter from the king to his chief officer, but the policy was appropriate to the situation and might have been made public for the sake of support. Yeah, so he's kind of like arguing intermittently here with other people's ideas, which is fine. But he just hasn't informed in a really weird way. Because it's like his commentary is in parentheses in between all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
the king's letter to the nation was as follows. King Antiochus, to the council of elders of the Jews and to the rest of the Jews, greeting. If you are well, that would be as we wish. We ourselves are in good health. Menelaus has informed us that you wish to go back to your homes and turn to your own private affairs. For those who go home by the 30th of Xanthicus, there shall be the assurance of safety and amnesty. Whereabout in the year is Xanthicus in relation to when this letter is purportedly written?
Oh, in relation to the letter.
Because, like, he publishes this
How
letter.
many months?
And he says, here's, like, the date that you have to do this by.
Yeah.
So how far off is the date?
So here's the commentary I have in this section. It is dated to the 148th year, Xanthicus the 15th. That is 12th of March, 164 BC.
Oh, he only gave him 15 days.
I suppose, yeah.
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 The Jews are to be free to follow their own way of life and their own laws as in earlier times, and no one is in any way to molest them because of the previous misunderstandings. I am also sending Menelaus with instructions to put your minds at ease. Farewell. In the year 148, on the 15th of Xanthicus. Okay. So yeah, he only gives them 15 days, basically.
Pretty much.
The Romans, too, sent them a letter as follows.
There is one note I should make. So for verses 30 through 31. So nevertheless, the amnesty ends the persecution, allowing the Jews to follow their own customs. But then in those verses, amending the text to diatemata rather than dapanamata, as the kosher laws would have been included in the reference to the Torah. So that's just a textual note there.
Yeah. The Romans, too, sent them a letter as follows. Quintus Memmius and Titus Manius, ambassadors of the Romans, to the people of the Jews, greeting. As for the concessions granted to you by Lysias, the kinsman of the king, we endorse them. As regards the points he decided to refer to the king, send someone immediately after you have considered them, so that we may present our views as befits your interests. For we are now on our way to Antioch. Accordingly, make haste to send representatives, so that we may know what your views are. Be well. In the year 148, in missing text, it says on the gap, see the note on verse 38, which is located somewhere.
So for verse 38, the date given is the same as that at the end of the third letter. As Gera remarks, it is inconceivable that Roman officials would have employed a Macedonian month and an official era of the Seleucid kingdom. Here, Gera is drawing on the work of earlier scholars such as Adolf von Schlatter and Victor Cherikover, I guess.
That's an unfortunate name.
I know, right? It would seem that the author is trying to fit all the documents together with these dates. The first letter is placed at the first month of 148 Seleucid era. The second is undated, and the last two are placed in the sixth month of 148 Seleucid era. And of course, there's an excursus on the letters too.
Yeah, Goldstein says Romans certainly did not date by the Seleucid era or by Macedonian months, or by the eccentrically named months favored by Antiochus IV. Thus, if our letter bears a Seleucid year date, it must be because Jews who preserved it filed it under that date, doing so perhaps immediately or perhaps later by inference from the year date of Lysias's letter in verses 16 through 21. The year date could hardly have been added by Jason or the abridger, for if one of them had added a date here, he surely would have done so also in verse 26. One manuscript, LAB, which I'm sure has...
Yeah, I think you should have a whole section on that.
Yeah, somewhere in here.
Yeah, but while you look for that...
But only one manuscript essentially gives the year.
Huh. I mean, I'm not going to comment on the year right now, but I found this interesting about the people that were mentioned. Like at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So the names of the Roman ambassadors are problematic. The manuscript reading is Quintus Memmius and Titus Manius. After Manius, whichever manuscript this is, manuscript V, adds Ernios, and 311, that's another manuscript, has Ernios Manio. Nice suggested that the second ambassador was thus Manius Sergius, who was Gaius Sulpicius, who with Gaius Sulpicius was sent to the east in the autumn of 164 BCE. This identification seems unlikely, as Morholm believes. It is true, however, as Bar Kokhba notes, we do not have information on all the delegations sent from Rome to Antioch. It is highly probable that in the 15 months between these two delegations, i.e. the delegation headed by Tiberius Gracchus at the end of summer 165 BCE, according to Polybius, and that of Manius Sergius at the beginning of 163 BCE, also according to Polybius. When practically speaking, a new ruler in the guise of Lysias was reigning, and the developments in Antioch's Anabasis were not regularly reported. A Roman delegation was dispatched to explore the intentions of the man in Antioch. As Gruen noted, this letter of the Romans is a response to a Judean initiative rather than a Roman initiative.
Yeah, it seems really strange how eager they are to give the Jews everything that they want. Especially in the Roman letter.
I felt like in First Maccabees, they even called that guy out on that. They said, hey, you seem far too eager to do that. No. And they attacked him anyways. Do you recall that?
Yeah, I remember that
There
happening.
you go. So this is different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and the commentary in Erdmann's pretty much ends with this letter is the earliest witness to any formal contact between the Jews and the Romans.
Mm.
And then it notes that we don't really have too much information about some of the names. That's about it.
Right. So, as far as we know, that 148 Seleucid Macedonian is the year that they met, as far as we know, based on that.
Yeah. So Doran rightly questions why the author of Second Maccabees, not given to archival or antiquarian concerns, preserved these letters. The answer is that they demonstrated that the Jews are not haters of other nations, but simply wish to follow their own way of life and laws. Which is fair, because as we mentioned before, so in First Maccabees, that one was more about political sovereignty, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This one is more about religious.
Well, also, it was about the military strength of the Jews.
Well, yeah, both of them are kind of like that, but one of the main differences, this one was more based around the religion, while the other one is more based around the culture.
Right.
And tactics.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And that is the end of chapter 11. Hey, if you're enjoying the stream so far, be sure to give us a like, share it with your friends, family, neighbors, countrymen,
And hey,
it's a relevant playlist.
Subscribe, add to relevant playlists.
Yeah,
Subscribe if you haven't. We also have the donation drive going on.
Yeah, we got a donation drive. We're trying to save up so that we can reach $666 in donations and get ourselves a Thetan meter.
And we're gonna see who's clear.
Yeah, who's?
Are you clear?
Oh, I'm absolutely clear.
I guess we'll see. We'll have to test it.
I was gonna muddle the audio, but I think he's clear. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, I'm gonna give you all these here commentaries.
Oh wow! Thank you so much.
I know I'm just the kindest. There's another one for you. But we can hop into chapter 12, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
And feel free to stop me whenever, I guess. As soon as this pact had been concluded, Lysias marched back to the king, while the Jews devoted their energies to farming. However, the local commanders, Timotheus and Apollonius, son of Janaeus, as well as Hieronymus and Demophon, and also Nicanor, the Cypriarch, gave them no chance to enjoy tranquility and live in peace.
So
a lot of names there.
Yeah. So by Timothy, the author can hardly intend the Timothy of 11:24 through 37, who was killed, but the Timothy of 12:10 through 25, which we're getting into. Since the author has clearly redistributed material arranged differently in First Maccabees, it seems likely that he has created two Timothys out of one, who operated east of the Jordan. Some, however, distinguish a local chief called Timothy from a Seleucid commander called Timothy. The other names in 12:2 are unknown, and the author has no further information about them.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Love when that happens.
It's also kind of weird that they would have no further information about. Well, I guess it does say that they are local commanders.
Mm-hmm. There's also a bit in this one. The author of 2nd Maccabees regards the Timothy in these verses as distinct from the Timothy who earlier invaded Judea and whose death is recorded in 1037, but most likely the author is mistaken. The Apollonius mentioned here is distinguished from others of the same name, Apollonius, captain of the Mysians, and Apollonius from Samaria. Hieronymus and Demophon are otherwise unknown. Nicanor was not governor of Cyprus, which was then part of the Ptolemaic Empire, but was the commander of Cypriot troops, like Crates, and thus of quite a lower rank from the Nicanor mentioned in chapters 8 and 14 through 15.
Yeah, different Nicanor too. The Joppites perpetrated an atrociously wicked art, pretending to have no hostile intentions. They provided boats and invited the Jews living among them, men, women, and children, to go on board. Oh no.
They're going to blow up the boats.
This sounds bad. Indeed, the invitation was made pursuant to a vote passed by the people of the city, and the Jews accepted it, wishing to live in peace and harboring no suspicions. But as soon as they went out to the sea, the Joppites sent everyone to the bottom, drowning at least 200. So they got everyone on board and then drowned them.
Yeah, so Joppa.
Yeah, it was that very important city.
Yeah, it was an
taken
important
over.
city. Coastal harbor town, about 32 miles from Jerusalem. It says, there's quite a bit here. The Jews were not citizens, but lived in the town. Perhaps the Jews thought they were being given a pleasure cruise. Verse 4 seems to suggest they did not know the reason of the voyage, but obeyed simply to keep the peace. Whoa.
Well, it kind of implies that they didn't just want to keep the peace, they wanted to be friends.
Let's all be friends on this nondescript, non-suspicious boat together.
Yes.
Would a non-citizen minority group have had any say in the matter?
Good question.
Yeah, it says Jamnia lay about 12 miles south of Joppa, about 34 miles in a straight line from Jerusalem, but much farther by road.
Right, because we're gonna switch scenes here pretty shortly.
So pretty shortly we switch scenes here. It says it's doubtful that a fire in Jamnia could have been seen in Jerusalem, which apparently we're going to get
into
word
it,
of. Yeah.
When Judas received the news of the cruel outrage perpetrated on his fellow Jews, he summoned his men and prayed to God, the just judge. You know, it's whenever they mention God before, I don't remember having a title like that.
No, he really
the
didn't.
The just judge.
Well, you know, it was really common to give like titles to gods.
Right. I'm saying that in this book specifically.
Right.
When he was addressed as God, I don't remember this title coming up.
No, I don't remember this title coming
Does
up.
You know that container you gave me, that really suspicious one of Brisk?
Yes.
When I opened it, it didn't pop at all.
That's weird. There was this Brisk can, right? In the fridge, and it seemed like there was a pressure difference because it was not like if
holding form.
Yeah,
it was easily malleable, like a piece of aluminum foil almost.
Exactly, it was exactly like that.
It's creepy. It's fine now. Now that I put pressure in it, it's operating like a normal can.
Okay, but it was so weird. Just there was the one can that had that too.
Yeah, nothing's wrong with it.
Yeah,
spooky.
But it didn't. Yeah, because I guess it wouldn't have popped, right? Yeah.
I suppose it couldn't have. There's no pressure release.
Yeah.
It's actually, it probably took some air in.
Either way, That's our little story for you.
Weird tangent. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Does the Hermenia commentary have anything on verse 6 and the title, The Just Judge?
I'm looking. They combine commentary on verses 5 and 6.
Sure, of course.
So,
I mean, while you look through that, I'm going to finish verse 6. Then he marched against the murderers of his brother Jews. In a night attack, he set fire to the port and burned the boats and massacred those who had taken refuge there. Since the town was shut up tight behind its walls, Judas withdrew, intending to return and extirpate the entire Joppite citizenry.
So, God is described as just judge. The unjust murder of Onias and Andronicos is called foul murders, as there here too the theme of just deserts is present. The ship of the Joppites are destroyed, and those who flee to the ships for safety are killed. The Joppites killed the Jews on the ships, and now they themselves are killed there too.
Well, yeah, I suppose they would deserve that, right?
Just dessert.
I mean, if they killed them.
I mean, if they're going...
If it's just random citizens...
like Hammurabi style, right?
Sure, but if it's like random citizens, then sorry, Judas, that was bad. But if it was like part of the group of people who did that, then sure. On learning that the people in Jamnia also wished to perpetrate the same kind of outrage upon the Jews. Okay, now it's everybody who dwelt among them. Judas fell upon the Jamnites too by night and set fire to the port and the ships so that the glare of the flames was visible as far as Jerusalem 240 stadia away. So yeah, as you mentioned, would not be visible. How? We'd have to look on like an actual globe.
Okay, hold on a sec. 240 stadia is about 45 kilometers. Bar Kokhba states that the straight line distance between Jerusalem and Jamnia harbor is 55 kilometers, but the road distance was twice as long as the 240 stadia estimated by 2nd Maccabees.
Aren't there mountains and stuff in the way? I certainly think that would be too far to see.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Unless
they're really high, the flames.
For Bar Kokhba, this shows that Jason of Cyrene had only a vague idea of the geography of Eretz Israel. However, Schwartz notes that it is perfectly possible that our author or his source could figure the distance as the crow flies. Schwartz noted that Strabo and Josephus claimed that one could see the coastal region from the high points in Jerusalem, and that the Appian claims that one could see a great fire at a distance of 1,000 stadia. I don't think so.
I mean,
maybe a really great fire at night, and you'd see the embers in the smoke clouds.
Right.
That's a really far distance,
and it's a clear night, or this moon's covered over. It's really pushing it. I don't think you can.
So this one, this next verse here.
Of course, it could be a figurative thing too.
That's what I'm guessing. Yeah.
Sounds alliteration like, yes.
So that's not alliteration.
That's right.
Metaphor.
It's hyperbole.
There you go. I keep getting those screwed up. I gotta look in a. Never mind. Go ahead.
So verse 10 apparently starts very strangely because there's a break in the, at least in Goldstein's translation, and he notes here, before our verses, the abridger has made an awkward cut, or perhaps the error of an early scribe has caused the omission of essential material. The narrative of the events at Jamnia seems to be complete in verse 9, but in verse 10, Judas and his men are on the march against Timotheus, which is weird because it completely jumps back to a different part of the narrative.
Tell me when you get to the end of verse 12.
Will do. From there, they had marched 9 stadia on their way against Timotheus, when at least 5,000 Arab infantry and 500 cavalry attacked him. A hard-fought battle ensued. Judas and his men won through the help of God. On being defeated, the nomads begged Judas to make peace with them, promising to give cattle and to help him and his men in other ways. Judas believed that the Arabs, in fact, would be useful in many ways, and consented to be at peace with them. After receiving hand clasps of peace, the Arabs went home to their tents.
Friendship bracelets.
Does it say friendship bracelets?
Hand clasps of peace.
Yes, I mean, it's basically a friendship.
It's
I
a
thought it was a
friendship
handshake.
bracelet. Is it?
Oh, maybe.
Maybe it's a handshake.
Check it out. I mean, that's
what is the verse?
that was verse 12, by
that
the
was
way.
verse 12. Okay. Hand.
Honestly, it kind of sounded like a hand job to me.
Yeah.
I thought handshake.
Also, yeah, there could be a lot of stuff, guys.
Yeah, no, there's nothing on it, but
Vague. Great.
yeah.
Perhaps a handshake.
Yeah, perhaps a handshake.
What if it's all three? Let's just leave it there.
But anyways,
They're
let
too
me
close now.
let me read some commentaries here about these verses. 12:10 through 12 are perhaps another version of Judas's meeting with the Nabateans from 1 Maccabees 5:25. The fortified town of Caspin is perhaps the Chaspho of 1 Maccabees 5:26-36. Possibly Caspin, 15 kilometers east in the Sea of Galilee. Charax is in the region of the Jews called Tubiani, the land of Tob, which Abel locates between Bozrah and Dera'ah in Syria, though this is much less than 95 miles from Caspin. But the Greek word charax means a palisade or a stake used in making palisades, and perhaps referred originally to a camp rather than a known town. Car-naim is well known and identified with Sheikh Saad. The sacred precincts
Oh, are you reading the thing for verse 13?
Oh, yeah. It doesn't say that it goes in the 13.
Okay. Yeah,
in the
that's
commentary.
yeah, it's
but
a Caspin there.
yeah.
Um,
Read verse 13.
Do it.
Judas also attacked a walled town called Caspin, which was strongly fortified and inhabited by Gentiles of very mixed stock.
Yeah. Well, oof.
That's like, ouch. That's
That's bad. But it does fit the reference earlier that they made when they were praying to God so that they would have the ability to fight against steel walls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
God, help us
Oh,
with these
yeah.
steel walls.
So both among Greeks and among Jews, there was the tendency to prize ethnic purity and to despise people of mixed stock. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Because if you remember very early on, because I mean our translations kind of differed, right? But there was either the
Right.
half tribe of Manasseh or half of the tribe of Manasseh.
right. Well,
There was also
I
polemics.
mean, the implication is that half of the tribe of Manasseh stayed on one side of the Jordan, and the other half of the tribe of Manasseh proceeded to the other side of the Jordan.
There's also a whole bunch of stuff against the Samaritans. Yeah, because they're the mixed ones, I suppose.
And of course, Ezra and Nehemiah.
Oh yeah, Ezra and Nehemiah. That's oof.
Yeah, I'm gonna finish this section and then we can continue.
Yeah.
But Car-naim is well known and identified with Sheikh Saad. The sacred precincts are probably the temple of Atargatis. This is gonna be in 1226.
Okay, so I'll tell you when we get to that. But one of the things I was checking in the Hermenia translation about the hand clasps of peace, the word that was used there was assurances in their translation.
Assurances. That's much different.
I guess, yeah, very different. Like their promises, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's like, we promise not to kill you. You can go back home.
yeah. Tell me when you get to the end of verse 16.
Okay. The people in the town, confident in the strength of their walls and in the store of provisions, treated Judas and his men with exceedingly uncivilized disrespect, reviling them and also blaspheming and uttering impious words. Judas and his men prayed to the great master of the universe, who overthrew Jericho in the time of Joshua without battering rams or siege engines. Then they charged the wall with the fury of wild beasts. That is, you said at the end of 16?
Yeah.
Having captured the town through God's will, they massacred innumerable victims, so that the adjacent lake, which was 2 stadia wide, appeared to have been filled from a spring of blood.
Yeah. It's pretty metal, huh?
Yeah, that is pretty metal. Of course, the reference there to Jericho and Joshua.
Yeah, Joshua 6:1 through 21.
Yeah.
So there's some commentary here. Let's go over this. Although a town named Chespho is mentioned in 1 Maccabees 5:36 as one of several cities captured by Judas and Gilead, here the author provides a more elaborate story of the capture of Caspin, which is probably the same city. The strength of the city is stressed as the basis for the inhabitants' arrogance. As usual, the author contrasts the blasphemous behavior of the Gentiles with Judas's piety. The reference to Joshua's attack on Jericho provides a biblical example for the following destruction and slaughter. The gruesome image of the blood-filled lake in verse 16 is emotionally powerful and is similar to the image of how, in the war against Syracuse, the defeated Athenians were drinking the river stained with their own blood in 2 Kings 3:22 through 23.
From there, they marched 750 stadia to reach the palisaded camp, and the Jews called... okay, hold on. What's this name here? Got a burp. To Biakanoi. That name, that word there.
Okay.
In verse 17. On their arrival, they did not find Timotheus, the regional commander, for he had withdrawn then from the region on failing to take his objective. Nevertheless, he had left in one place a very strong garrison. Dosithios and Sosipatros, 2 of the commanders serving under Maccabees, marched off and wiped out the men Timotheus had left behind in the stronghold, more than 10,000 in number. Maccabees, having drawn up his army in regimental formations, put them in command of the regiments. Thereupon, he set out against Timotheus, who had with him 120,000 infantry and 2,500 cavalry. On learning that Judas was on the march, Timotheus took the precaution of sending off the women and children and baggage to the fortress called the Car-naim.
Was that verse 21?
Yes.
So verse 20.
I'll finish verse 21. How about that?
Yeah, finish verse 21.
For it was difficult to besiege or attack because all routes of access went through narrow passes.
So there's this Greek term that I think appears when he's saying the things that they're sending home. Right? The term could cover, as Bar Kokhba states, armor bearers, cooks, storekeepers, and maintenance men, as well as slaves. As Schwartz notes, the attitude to women and children is very male-centered, as in other siege accounts, the strong defense of the besieged city, in this instance Car-naim, is emphasized. Car-naim is usually identified with the Car-naim of 1 Maccabees 5:26, and the Ashtaroth Car-naim of Genesis 14:5, and located at Set's side. 4 kilometers northeast of Tel Astara, about 35 kilometers east of the Sea of Galilee.
All right, now, where was I? That was a lot of 21. Yeah.
Yeah, it also
22 now.
says in here the Hellenic name at Targus incorporates 2 ancient Semitic goddesses, Ashtaroth and Anath. Ashtaroth was worshipped at Tel Astara, the biblical Ashtaroth Car-naim. From Car-naim, Judas marched to Ephron and Silothepus, and so to Jerusalem. So these are, implied pagan areas, right?
Or just named after them, yeah.
Yeah, at least named after.
Yeah. Nevertheless, at the sight of Judas's first regiment, fear and panic struck the enemy as a result of the manifest intervention against them of the one who sees all. They rushed headlong to flee in every direction, so that many were injured by their own comrades and run through by the points of their swords. Judas pressed the pursuit with great vigor and massacred the wretches, destroying about 30,000 men. That's a lot of people.
Yes.
Timotheus himself fell into the hands of Dositheus and Sosipatros, and begged, very cunningly, that they release him unharmed, on the ground that he was holding prisoner the parents and brothers of many of the Jews, whose lives would be worth nothing. After he used all manner of means to get them to believe his promise that he would restore the prisoners unhurt, they released him in order to save their brothers. Okay, so he's lying here.
Yeah.
Of course, it's to get out of a bad situation.
Yeah, as you do.
Yeah, as you do. If someone's about to kill you, you're gonna try to lie your way out of it. But still, though, do you think that's because they really like to concentrate a lot on piety?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the story about the martyrdoms? There's Eliezer and then the woman and 7 sons. Yeah,
they wouldn't lie.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't lie. But here Judas is lying. I get why he's lying.
Yeah.
But he's still lying.
Well, maybe that's why, the account in First Maccabees was essentially atheistic.
Well, secular, but yeah.
I mean, it was secular, right? But, Judas, he's not the most pious guy. He never was.
Yeah, that's true.
He's a good military leader.
Sure, definitely.
But he's not it doesn't detail how Judas kept the Passover.
Well, we're going to get into something here.
Mm.
So it's maybe we can talk about that a little bit too. Judas then marched against Car-naim and the shrine of this is the one that you were mentioning before.
Mm-hmm.
Atargatis, and slew 25,000 persons. After routing and destroying these, he turned to attack the strong town of Ephron, where Lysias had a residence. Stalwart young men posted before the walls put up a stout resistance. Inside the town were large stones of artillery and missiles.
So Atargatis, Syrian goddess and consort of Hadad, was identified with the Canaanite goddess Astarte, according to this commentary. It's a little more complex, right? The meaning of Car-naim is 2 horns, which may reflect the iconography of the goddess, where the horns symbolize her power.
Well, it's not just of the goddess herself. It's of so many ancient Near Eastern gods, like the bull and horn iconography.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what that means.
Which, even Jerusalem had that.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Judas and his men prayed to the master whose might shatters the strength of the enemy. What a title.
They keep giving him better titles.
They do, yeah. Then they captured the city and slew at least 25,000 of the inhabitants. On withdrawing from there, they marched against Scythopolis, a city 600 stadia from Jerusalem. However, The Jews residing there bore solemn witness to the this is a weird word. Scythopolitans' goodwill toward them, and to the kindness they had shown them in times of trouble. Accordingly, Judas and his men thanked the Scythopolitans, urging them to continue in the future to be friendly to our people. They arrived at Jerusalem just before the time of the Feast of Weeks. And then I'm going to read this next verse, and then I'm sure you can expand on it. After the festival called Pentecost, they set out to attack Gorgias, the governor of Idumea.
Woot.
So Scythopolis, or Bethshean, as mentioned in 1 Maccabees 5:52, as a place that the refugees from Gilead simply passed by. Here, no reason is given for Judas's hastening there. Perhaps the reason is that the author of 2 Maccabees enjoys recounting the goodwill between the Gentiles and Jews. The Festival of Weeks, or Shabbut, was a harvest celebration called Pentecost in Greek, i.e., the 50 days after Passover. The author stresses the piety of Judas's forces in that they break off their campaigning to celebrate the festival. That's very pious, isn't it? It's pious to stop warring so that you can party.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that just makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, so they do present Judas and his soldiers and everything, as pious Jews.
Yeah.
But they're not, like, the most pious.
Yeah, they
Jews.
could be more pious.
Yeah.
I give him a C+.
On the unintercalated Jewish calendar of 163 BCE, the Pharisaic Pentecost, the 6th of Sivan, fell on Wednesday, April 21st. If the Jews had been observing a fully intercalated calendar, the Pentecost would have fallen on Saturday, June 19th. And there would have been no special interruption of Judas's campaigning in order to celebrate the holiday. Our reasoning here involves unproved assumptions, but still would confirm our hypothesis that Judas and his followers in 163 BCE used an intercalated calendar, which is actually kind of cool.
Mm.
Yeah, because they had to stop on the day to do stuff. So he marched out with 3,000 infantry and 400 cavalry. When they joined battle, a few of the Jews fell. Just a few. However, Dositheus, one of the Tubiacanoi, a strong cavalryman, kept pursuing Gorgias, caught him by the cloak, and began to drag him by brute force, intending to take the abominable wretch prisoner. But one of the Thracian horsemen charged Dositheus and cut off his arm at the shoulder, so that Gorgias escaped to Marisa. Wow. So he was being dragged off, and then one of his allies was like, "No, I'll save you," and then he cut off the dude's arm.
Yeah.
That saved him?
Well, yeah, because now no one's pulling him. He just has an arm attached to his cloak.
Yeah.
That's one way to do it. Could have cut the thing or...
No, like if I was
Oh,
I was holding on to Reuben like this.
You cut off the enemy's arm.
Yes.
Gotcha. Good. I thought they cut off his arm.
That'd be stupid.
That's why I thought it was stupid.
Yes. That would be stupid.
Sorry, did you have some commentary to add on?
What verse is that?
I just ended verse 35.
Okay, so Bacanor, 1235, is otherwise unknown, and a possible correction of the Greek text suggests that Dositheus was rather one of the Tubacanoi, or Tubianoi. Esdras of 1236, well, it's not that important. Esdras of 1236 is perhaps to be identified with Eleazar of 823 and Azariah.
What did you say about Bacanor earlier?
Bacanor, he's unknown, but a possible. Yeah. It just says about Bacanor that he's unknown.
What verse was he in?
1235. It says Bacanor, 1235.
Yeah, we don't know anything about him. He doesn't even exist.
I have no I didn't read off his name here. So that's interesting. So
that's how little is known on him.
Let me look at the Hermeneia, verse 35, because that is weird.
Yeah, I'm checking here because maybe he has Bacanor somewhere. There's something.
Dos Theos, one of the Tubians. Yeah.
Here, I'll read the note for this. So they have Dos Theos and as one of the two Bacanoi. By identifying him in this manner, the writer surely means to distinguish him from the Dositheus in verses 19 and 24. Ancient scribes found confusing the succession of short syllables beginning with the T with the tau in the Greek of one of the two Bacanoi. The more so as in ancient manuscripts. Words were not divided, and that's called scriptio continua. And tau was the genitive singular of the definitive article. Already in verse 17, most scribes had trouble reading the name of the Bacanoi. Here only. Let's see, I don't know which one this is, but it's a Latin manuscript and an Aramaic one. Preserve all the letters of the name. And the Latin Septuagint version, the Latin Septuagint, took tau as the definite article and corrected, quote unquote, it to a genitive plural. And apparently the genitive plural is de biasinus. Their version is supported by there's two more Latin manuscripts. Sorry, it's not the Septuagint one from before. That was actually just the number for the Latin manuscript. Whoops. And then there's another Latin manuscript, which apparently is filled with nonsense, but still hints at the correctness of some other manuscripts. And then I'm trying to find something for.
So Bacanor, Dositheus, verse 35, a cavalryman who should not be identified with the commander mentioned earlier. The NRSV identifies him as one of Bacanor's men, but the better reading would have him as one of the two Baiani.
Yeah, so because of this weird. There was probably some misreading somewhere, because from the genitive plural ending on, they somehow managed to read the genitive singular ending oros, like the genitive singular of the common name Nicanor. The misreading could have been facilitated by the practice of scribes to curve both vertical strokes of nu so that they were concave outward. Sigma was concave to the right, like our C. Thus, the scribe produced the otherwise unknown name Bacanor, which also appears in another Latin manuscript. The reading of, I think this is Alexandrius, and Q, and then on the other the Latin manuscript that I just mentioned would mean Dositheus, one of Bacanor's group. Yeah. So we have solved the mystery of Bacanor.
Yes.
It only took a bunch of stumbling around.
Some manuscripts, some scribes would have misread it.
Yes.
As you almost did several hundred
times.
Tell
me
yes.
when you get to the end of verse 37.
Okay. Ezri and his men fought on for a very long time and were on the point of exhaustion. Thereupon, Judas prayed to the Lord to manifest himself as their ally and their leader in battle, taking up as a battle cry hymns in the language of his forefathers, I'm guessing Hebrew. He fell upon Gorgias and his men, took them by surprise, and routed them. That's the end of 37.
Okay. So the ancestral language, yeah, that's probably Hebrew. But this bit here, the story here belongs to a bardic tradition of heroes' stories, like the roster of David's warriors in 2 Samuel 23. Whereas in the encounter...
David's mighty men.
Yes. Whereas in the encounter in 1 Maccabees 5:55 through 61, Gorgias is victorious. Here the author has him fleeing from the battle scene like Nicanor and Lysias to Marisa, one of the major cities in Idumea. The commander Esdras is mentioned without any preparation, another sign of the shorthand nature of the work. Some scholars have suggested that he should be identified with the Eliezer of 823.
After reassembling the army, Judas came to the town of Odolam. The seventh day was almost upon them, so they purified themselves according to the established custom and observed the Sabbath there. On the next day, at the time when work became permissible, Judas and his men went to recover the bodies of the fallen in order to lay them to rest with their kin in their ancestral tombs, which is a very nice thing. Because if they weren't in their ancestral tombs, or at least in their land, that would be a problem.
Right. Very dishonorable.
Yeah. They found under the tunics of every one of those who had fallen objects which had been consecrated to the idols of Jamnia, forbidden to Jews by the Torah. It was clear to all that for this very reason the men had fallen. So they just kind of made it their own fault. Like, well, I guess. Do you remember those? I think we were talking about a few episodes ago. Those coins, that were carried.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think this is possibly a reference to that?
It might be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that's verse 40. So if
The term used for objects consecrated.
yeah, so my guess is it's those weird coins for now, but I'm sure there is a
Household gods of Laban that Rachel stole.
okay. Well, yeah, that's
Obvious.
Right.
so if they actually have idols on them, is that what they're trying to say?
There is no context in which hieroma can be shown to mean amulet. Goldstein states that his main objection to Levi's thesis is that Judas's followers would not have put faith in pagan gods following Deuteronomy 7:25 through 26. He therefore sees the objects as referring to gold and silver ornaments or vessels dedicated to pagan gods that the fallen Jewish soldiers had taken as booty in the attack on Jamnia. Schwartz suggests that the objects may be pendants as they were under the soldiers' tunics. The author of the condensed narrative stresses that wearing such objects was against the law, but some followers of Judas may have wanted all help they could get. The repetition of a demonstrative Greek word stresses the specificity of the cause.
It looks, because they are, of course, blaming the fact that these Jews died on, the people themselves, because like, well, you were worshiping idols, obviously. But the thing is, like, let's say they all had those idols,
right?
But they didn't check everyone else to see if they had idols.
Yeah,
that's
the
one
living
thing.
people and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Also, it's like, I don't know what that's called. That's some kind of bias, right? I think it is.
Probably.
The one where you just go along with all the ideas in case something went
No,
wrong?
it's a different one.
Different one?
Yeah. Either way, I can't remember.
So with this verse that we're about to go into, we're going to hear the just judge again.
Ah, okay.
So
thanks for showing up again, Just Judge.
There's a note on it. The just judge is one word in Greek and is not well attested. Found at present only in a petition of 133 CE to a Roman prefect.
Can that be God's name instead of Yahweh in the high place?
Just Judge.
Yeah. I think we should give him goofy names.
There's a lot of names.
I like
There's
that
a lot of
one. That
names.
one's...
No, it's got to be Yahweh.
It's gotta be our way.
Or just judge to his friends.
Yeah.
Sure. Said all fast and stuff.
So it's only found in a petition of 133 CE to a Roman prefect. The author uses it here to resonate with the prayer of Judas as he attacks Jamnia on the sea.
They all blessed the judgment of the Lord, the righteous judge, who exposes what has been concealed. Then they turned in supplication, praying that the sin which had been committed might be entirely blotted out. Noble Judas exhorted the people to keep themselves free from sin, inasmuch as they had seen with their own eyes what had happened to the fallen as a result of their sin. He took up a collection from every man for a total of 2,000 silver drachmas, and sent the money to Jerusalem to be used to bring a sin offering, a deed altogether fitting and proper, for he had their resurrection in mind. So I think there should be some notes on the resurrection, right?
What verse was that?
Yeah, resurrection is the end of verse 43.
The end of verse 43. 43. Okay. 43A, 43B. So it's the end of 43, so it's 43B.
Or C, I don't know.
Right. Okay. These verses are difficult contextually and also difficult to translate. That's 42B through 45 they're referencing.
Okay.
Verse 42b seems to reflect the sacrifice for the preparation of the community whose sin has come to light, similar to the reparation offering. The community aspect of the sacrifice is shown by each man's contributing to the sacrifice. The phrase, taking account of the resurrection, is a comment by the author that interprets Judas's actions. As seen in chapter 7, the author believes in the resurrection. The language there, particularly 7:23, evokes the language of creation. The hope of the brothers is that they will live again in a newly created world. In this passage, verses 44 through 45 offer two alternatives, which we'll see in a moment, but I'll just lift them off here. Either Judas does not think that the dead rise and believes that it is foolish to pray to them, or he believes that a reward awaits those who die piously, a holy and pious thought. Some scholars have suggested the expressions superfluous and foolish to pray for the dead and holy and pious thoughts are later insertions. However, in the light of recent research on rituals for the dead in Israel, e.g., actually, those rites underlying Isaiah 57, to pray for the dead may in fact reflect a custom of which only traces can be discerned. The Israelites clearly believed that the dead had another existence.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The customs and rituals surrounding the dead suggested the belief that there is a community that stretches beyond death. The author argues that these customs and rituals mean that one can make atonement for those who have died. Such practices presuppose a resurrection of the dead.
All right, and then let's get into these last two verses here.
Yeah.
Indeed, if he did not expect the fallen to be resurrected, it would have been superfluous and foolish to pray for the dead. Moreover, he perceived that a most glorious recompense is laid up for those who pass away in a state of piety, a holy and pious thought.
Yeah.
Therefore, he had rites of atonement performed for the dead to absolve them from their sin. I think that's an inclusion. A holy and pious thought.
Yeah, well, it seems like they're trying to redeem Judas's character after his previous failure to become a martyr, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
So there's a little bit here. Judas took up a collection, very large collection.
When he was getting
the sin offering.
Yeah.
However, this act needed explanation because in most minds the sin would have been expiated by death. For the author, the explanation lay in the belief of the resurrection. Expiation for these sinners was required because the dead would rise again. It would not be needed for those who had died in godliness, 1245, and in their case it was holy and pious thought. This passage, witnessing the idea of prayer for the dead, has this and other apocryphal books, has been the cause of much Protestant reluctance to accept this and other apocryphal books as holy scripture.
So there is a little
part
bit
of the reasons.
Here's a little bit about like the potential additions. So because he had hoped that those who had fallen would be resurrected, this is a he has a he's quoting a certain manuscript right now. And then in parentheses, it is superfluous and useless to pray for the dead. In parentheses, thinking that a most glorious recompense is laid up for those who take the sleep of death in a state of piety. And then in parentheses again, a holy and salutary thought. The first parentheses, De Bruyn suggests, is an insertion by a skeptical reader, and the second parentheses, one by a believer in resurrection. The second parentheses, however, is in character for Jason himself and is well enough expressed. I mean, it might be in character, but we don't actually get that much of Jason himself coming out.
Right.
And it would be hard to distinguish between Jason and the abridger.
Right.
Yeah. If De Bruyn is right, the scribes responsible for Codex A and Manuscript Q added the words "I may," if did not, and left the words "on n," would have been, unexpressed in Greek, but were confident that the reader would supply them mentally. The scribes responsible for a Latin and Syriac manuscript added not only "I may," but also "on n." Thus, the skeptic's note was brought into the sentence and made innocuous. So that is that's that. What are your thoughts on those chapters there?
Well, lots of bloody, brutal battles.
Yeah, it was definitely quite brutal. The tearing of the arm.
The fountain of blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff there. A lot of people died.
Yeah. I mean, the letters weren't that
They're
entertaining.
political.
And it seems really strange, actually, that you would take something like, first you have all these letters presented to you in which, like, essentially every concession imaginable is given to the Jews. Right? And then immediately after, in the next chapter, we go into, like, this bloody account of, like, all these battles that are done. Well, it seems strange because you would expect that, that account would come before the account of these letters where a whole bunch of people concede to the Jews, right? At least
You would expect that,
thematically.
yeah, definitely.
So it feels a little out of order.
Yeah, but that maybe the author was, like, intentionally trying a different story presentation. Like, some of it is historical, right?
Sure, yeah.
And it was cool to see the earliest mention of Roman-Jewish interaction.
Yeah, of at least a formal, I guess.
Yeah, 133, right?
Was it 133?
I think it was 133.
I'm pretty sure it was after. It was like 148, right? Something like that. I don't know. I don't remember, but it's in there. You got to go back
it's
and
in there.
Yeah.
Watch it all again.
Yeah.
Watch it all again.
So, like, the thing at the bottom here, just go this way,
Back.
right?
Yeah.
This way would be back?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This way would be back. So go that way until you find it.
There you go.
If you made it to the end.
Yep. Well, this is the end. If you enjoyed our stream today, we accept donations.
We do. We accept donations. We got a super chat. We got that little money button right there at the bottom of the chat.
We also have a Patreon. If you go to our Patreon for a very small amount of money, $1,
Yeah.
you can get all of our video scripts.
And that's fantastic. All of our video scripts, all the behind the scenes stuff is great.
Yeah.
You also...
You should be happy you don't have to watch me, though.
Yeah, exactly. You suck.
Yeah, you can also, for $10, you can get inserted into our monthly T-shirt giveaway.
Yes, the monthly T-shirt giveaways. They're a lot of fun because, we every month we spin a wheel, and, that's what you're getting. You're going to see a wheel spun.
Yep. Thank you very much, Spider 10x30. Very
10 by
cool.
10 by 30. Thank you for the $199. That is going to go straight to affording a Thetan meter.
Yes, a Thetan meter. And remember, if you donate $50 a month or more to our Patreon, you could be on this show or on our Sunday show.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
You can join Hangouts and stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. You get cool rewards. Let's see what else we got going on. If you don't want to pay us every month, you could get yourself a T-shirt.
Yeah.
On Teespring.
Or
you don't have to just guess about winning it. You can just get one.
Yeah. Or, if you wanted to make the show a little better for yourself, you could buy us some books on our Amazon wish list.
Yeah, link is in the description.
Yeah, we can use those books on this show.
On the show and videos, we will definitely use them. It's all books on the wish list. So it's all stuff that you will be getting back in some way.
All right, I think I'm done chilling.
You're done chilling.
Twitter.
Yes, Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
And I think
check it out.
Yeah, that should be it. Free to follow us on there.
Yep.
See you guys, and we will see you Sunday and also Friday next